Hello, a very good evening. It's 7:02 on LBC. I'm Iain Dale with you here until 10. Now, we have a very, very special occasion today because it's the first time that a Chancellor of the Exchequer has been brave enough to do a phone-in on a budget day or spring statement day. And I think the Chancellor is possibly at this moment thinking, was this such a good idea? Well, we'll tell over the next 45 minutes. Rishi, thank you very much indeed for joining us on LBC.
Well, evening, Ian.
Now, I should say, if you want to put your questions to the Chancellor, the number to call 0345 6060 973. You can, of course, text your question to on 84850. And don't forget, you can watch us on Global Player. Now, Chancellor, when you stood up in the Commons at lunchtime, you kind of must have known the expectations that were on you. What was your main aim with this spring statement?
Well, first of all, thanks for having me, and great to be able to spend a bit of time with you and your listeners. You know, I think there were a couple of things. The first was, as I've always tried to do in this job, is just explain to people honestly what's going on. And as part of my job as Chancellor, is just explain what's happening with our economy, what the outlook is, some of the challenges we're facing. And then, most importantly, provide people with the reassurance that I and the government are on their side. And, you know, we've got some uncertain and challenging times ahead. I wish I could solve every problem that comes our way, but I can't. But where I can make a difference, of course, I'm going to. And today, I think people will have seen from some of the measures that we outlined, whether it's raising national insurance thresholds, cutting fuel duty, cutting income tax in time, that you know, this government is on the side of hard-working British families, your listeners, and we'll get through these next challenges together and move forward.
But what about people at the bottom of the income scale, people on benefits, pensioners who are on limited incomes? Very little mention of either of them in the spring statement. And in real terms, they're going to lose, or people on benefits are going to lose 5% of their income over the next 12 months, according to your own OBR. Now, that's a £12 billion reduction in benefits. Now, shouldn't you have done more to help those people?
Well, if people look at the last couple of years and the things that I and the government have done, we've always been careful to make sure that those who really need our help, the most vulnerable in society, get it. And today was no different from that, in fact. We announced £500 million of extra money that will go to local councils and something called the Household Support Fund. And that's because, you know, it's impossible for me, you know, sitting in my office in Downing Street, you know, to know exactly everywhere individually who are the people that really need help. And I, you know, having been a local government minister, I know what a brilliant job local councils do at knowing the families that are vulnerable in their areas. And this money goes to them to help on a discretionary basis, those families who really need their help. You know, but also, you know, I generally think that the best way to help people on welfare over time is to help support them into good jobs and get them into good jobs, make sure those jobs are well paid, and then make sure that they can keep more of the money that they earn from those jobs. And we've been doing that a lot, actually. In October, we cut something called universal credit taper rate. That's a tax rate in universal credit that means that millions of people on low incomes got a £1,000 a year tax cut. And combined with,
you also cut the £20 uplift to people on universal credit, didn't you? And that you could have done something in this budget to maybe ameliorate that, given that inflation is now far higher than anybody really expected at that time.
I mean, you know, you're talking about something that we put in place during the pandemic, right? And you know, if you look today, you know, 2 years to the day since we first went into lockdown, and that was an extraordinary and unprecedented situation. And there were lots of things we had to do during a pandemic to help get the country through it, you know, introducing furlough, notably. But it was right when the pandemic finished and we were getting through it that lots of those temporary measures ended because they were temporary. I mean, we're not obviously going on with furlough right now, and that temporary uplift in universal credit was one of those. But we weren't done supporting people. As I said, in the autumn, we put £2 billion extra into universal credit, rewarding those for working hard, making sure people keep more of their money. And what it meant, combined with all the other changes we've made today, if you take, say, a single mother who's got 2 kids and working full-time on the national living wage, if you look at all the changes we've made on universal credit, the national living wage, the tax changes today, they're going to be £1,600 a year better off as a result of these policies. So when you're talking about those who are most vulnerable, you know, I feel proud and confident that we are putting the support in place to help them.
But given where inflation is heading, and I think you'd probably agree with me that we haven't seen the worst of inflation yet, people's real-term income, particularly those on benefits, are going to be cut over the next 12 months. The uplift was at 3.1%. Inflation is now 6.2% and going higher. Do you not think that it was wrong to ignore the fact that this has happened in this spring statement, and that you should have maybe given the £20 back today?
No, I don't think it's right to say that we ignored it. And it's very much uppermost in my mind. And that's why, as I said, we announced an extra £500 million for the Household Support Fund directly to support those families that are most vulnerable. But remember, what we did announce today will help lots and lots of people. So the increase in the national insurance thresholds to just over £12,500 is the biggest increase in a tax threshold pretty much ever in British history. It's a £6 billion tax cut that will benefit 30 million people across the United Kingdom. I would imagine the vast majority of your listeners tonight. It's going to put £330 extra in their pockets. And for 70% of people, they will be better off as a result of that policy, even accounting for the new health and care levy, as well as cutting fuel duty by 5p, which came into effect earlier this evening. That combined with our freeze for a typical driver with a car is £100 saving this coming year. So these are pretty significant sums that will help. But you're right, there are challenges ahead.
But doesn't this sort of thing fuel the idea that, a lot of people have been emailing me about today when they knew you were coming on the programme, that they think, how can a rich man like you, a multimillionaire with several houses, how can you possibly relate to the way that they live their lives? We heard from the head of Iceland today that food banks are turning away potatoes now because people can't afford the electricity or gas to cook them. Now, can you relate to somebody in that situation?
I'm sitting here in this job as the product of a lot of sacrifice and a lot of kindness from lots of people in my life, and starting with my grandparents who emigrated here from India and elsewhere, without a lot, and my parents worked their socks off and sacrificed a lot to provide opportunities for me and my younger brother and sister, notably education, right? And that was important to them, and they thought that would be for us the springboard for creating a better life for us. And, I'm really grateful that they did. And it's why I'm sitting here talking to you tonight in this job. And of course I'm cognizant that not everyone has had those same opportunities, and I've been fortunate. But that's why I work day and night in this job to spread those opportunities, to make sure as many people as possible have the same types of opportunities. And I'm making sure that I'm on people's side. And I'd say, judge me by my actions, right? People have seen me in this job for a couple of years. They've seen the kinds of things I've done. They probably remember those press conferences right at the beginning when I got this job and we locked down pretty much 2 years to the day. And then I had to introduce furlough. And I said to people, look, we will be with you through this very difficult period that we're about to go through. We will be compassionate in how we do it. And I think people hopefully can judge me on those actions.
I could talk to you for the next half an hour by myself, but the reason you're here is to talk to callers. That's what we're going to do now. Let's go to Hazel in Crawley. Hazel, thank you very much for your call. What would you like to ask the Chancellor?
So I am a single parent to 2 children who on paper has a good job and what's considered a good salary. But unfortunately, the rising costs of everything, especially energy, have now put an intense strain on my ability to provide for my children. The significant increase in our energy bill has meant that we don't have the boiler on. The lights are always off unless absolutely necessary. And when it's cold, we wear jumpers and coats, and sometimes you can see our breaths when we breathe. Now, despite working a full-time job, I'm having to find ways to bridge the gap. I've started cleaning houses, and I spend every evening riding a bike, delivering for Uber Eats. I've managed to cut my grocery shop down to just £15 a week for an adult and 2 children, and I often go without myself to make sure the kids get what they need and they're fed. A £150 grant towards energy bills, which have risen by an average of £2,000 a year, just isn't going to cut it. I've just about been able to balance things up until this point, but I'm now facing paying out more each month than I'm making. What are you going to do to address the soaring costs of energy? And if you're not doing anything, please tell me what else you suggest I can be doing to help myself.
Well, Hazel, thanks for your question. And look, I can't imagine how difficult your job is, right? I've got 2 kids as well, and I, have as I said, obviously my wife and other helped with us, so enormous admiration for what you're doing, and it sounds like you're working your socks off to look after them. So tribute to you. On energy bills in particular, you're right, they are going up, and we have something called the energy price cap, which has protected people's bills from going up. But in April it will go up. So on average,
and October again.
Well, first of all, it's going to go up in April, and that's what we know, and it goes up on average from about £1,300 to £2,000, and that's going to affect almost everybody. And it's obviously a significant increase. So what we announced last month was £350 worth of support to help people meet those bills. So £150, I think as you pointed out, you will get as a rebate through your council tax bill in April. So many people will be seeing that now. Hopefully it's come through on a leaflet at home. And then in October, another £200 off as well. So I think, that hopefully will make a difference. We'll have to see what the October price cap is. We don't know yet, and it'd be wrong to speculate, but obviously we'll see what happens then and adjust as necessary. But to put more money in your pocket, as you said, the measure I announced today, I'm sure will help you, and that was a significant tax cut on national insurance. So again, not knowing your particular circumstances, but a typical worker is going to see £330 tax cut starting in July, and I hope that that's helpful to you and your kids.
Does that include the 1.2% rise? Well, because you're putting up national insurance by 1.2% in April, and then cutting it for people at the lower
so
end.
The combination of those two things mean that 70% of workers, and probably Hazel, given the situation she described herself being in, would be in this category. 70% of workers will pay less tax even after accounting for the new levy. So it will really help put extra cash in people's pockets starting in July.
OK, Hazel, a quick response from you?
I think the response from Rishi is difficult because the support that is apparently being offered just isn't relative at all to what the rising costs are for us. And, the fact that energy is going to be going up again in October, despite how significantly it has gone up already, you're going to see more and more people relying on food banks, then also not able to afford to work. And you're going to have people in low-income families or families such as myself who may well get very, very ill because they're unable to afford to heat their homes.
OK, thank you very much for your calling. One of the things I think, as I mentioned, there was petrol prices. You've cut petrol duty by 5p. France has done 12.5p, but there were a lot of garages, certainly in my local area, that in anticipation of you cutting the 5p, added another 5p. There is profiteering going on here, isn't there, among some of the petrol companies?
Well, I wrote today, as soon as I sat down, out to all the retailers and associations, telling them they should pass on this fuel duty cut as quickly as possible. I'm really pleased to see. I was at Sainsbury's earlier today, and I know they, for example, are passing it on, I think, overnight, so people will start feeling the benefit from tomorrow, which is really good. And you're right about France, but their cut only lasts until the summer, whereas our cut lasts for 12 months, and France actually has higher fuel duty rates than we do in the first place. But this is a meaningful saving. It's the first time we've cut fuel duty in a decade, and if you're a typical car driver, the combined with the freeze that we've already put in place, it will be a £100 saving over the year. If you're a van driver, it's probably about £200. Again, Hopefully this will help.
Let's move on to our next caller. It's Sarah in Grimsby. Sarah, hi, what would you like to ask?
Hi, thank you to both of you for having me on. My question is to the Chancellor. What will the spring statement do to help young people, if at all? I turned 24 last week, and I know that my friends, people our age, we don't have much hope for the future. House prices are soaring, national insurance, we can't get jobs, for example.
Sarah, hi. Well, I'm sorry that you feel like that, but I want to tell you that hopefully you can feel more confident and optimistic about the future. So on national insurance, today we announced that we'll be putting in place a really big tax cut for national insurance, as we were just discussing with Hazel. So that will come in July, and that will mean about a £330 tax cut for
Why
a
can't
typical
it come in April?
worker.
That's the beginning of the tax year.
Yeah, it's. I would happily do it in April, but unfortunately, it takes time for all the payroll providers and software providers to change all their systems and work with employers to do it.
Computer says no.
So it's not so much normally they take longer than that, so this is quicker than it happens normally. But again, it's as quick as we can operationally deliver it to all of you, not us, but so much all the software providers. So Sarah, that will help on national insurance. But you also talked about jobs, and you're right. And I want to make sure that we're providing opportunities for young people at the start of their career. We put something in place during the pandemic called Kickstart, for example, where the government stepped in and fully funded high quality jobs for young people who are at the risk of unemployment. And that program's been a fantastic success. 125,000 Kickstarters have started on that program, and I'm really looking forward to seeing what happens. And I don't know if that's something that could work for you or not. In general, for other listeners as well, youth unemployment today is lower than it was before the pandemic, which actually, when you consider all the things that we've been through, I think is a great achievement.
Why do you think, though, that people like Sarah, at her age of 24, do not feel optimistic about the future? Now, OK, not everybody will think that, but I think a lot of people feel that they're not going to have the opportunities that maybe their parents had. And that's a really... I mean, we all want people to be aspirational, and it's a really sad state of affairs. How have we got into that?
Yeah. No, that is sad, actually. And I guess incumbent on us to do a better job communicating the things that we are doing to help people like Sarah. And again, I don't know if Sarah's in work or not in work, but we've announced tons of different ways for people like Sarah to go and get new skills, new qualifications, largely funded by the government. And whether it's the Kickstart scheme I mentioned, apprenticeships, we've got something called traineeships, sector-based work academies, skills boot camps, and hopefully you can go online and look all these things up. But there's tons of opportunities for young people to say, okay, let me go and get this new qualification or get some training in something which will help me get a new job or a first job. And we are standing right behind young people so that we can support them into work that way. And also the national living wage increase that is coming in very shortly is also going to apply to people over the age of 23, which is a new thing. So we've lowered the age that the national living wage will impact positively. And again, that will help Sarah as well in her job.
Sarah, you clearly don't feel the government is standing behind you, though, do you? Why?
Well, it's really hard to explain, but you look at house prices, for example. Grimsby is a pretty cheap area, but I look at houses in Grimsby and it's more than probably my parents could afford, what I could afford. I know this may be more personal to me, but I can't count the amount of jobs I've applied for. It's getting to the point where people think we're going to, if people don't want kids because they can't afford them, they're putting off starting families. It's easy for people to throw stats around saying, we're going to add, these new opportunities, lower taxes. But until we see it, that it's the young people, it's not going to be viable vote for the Conservative Party.
Sarah, can I just ask, I don't know if you're out of work at the moment. I can't tell if you are or you're not. I mean, did you talk to your work coach about the Kickstart scheme at all? Or did they mention it to you?
I've heard of it, yes, but I haven't looked into it properly yet. But yes, I am. I'm aware of it.
Yeah, great. So that's something that is designed literally to help people like you, especially if you've been out of work during the pandemic, where, as I said, we were fully funding a high-quality job for 6 months, and that's benefited 125,000 young people. I'm sorry it hasn't got to you. The other thing we're doing in your part of the world, actually, is creating a new free port. And what that will do is create a zone in your part of the world, which will mean that jobs are created as companies invest, because we're providing them with lots of incentives to do so. It's something that we can do now that we've left the EU, and yours is one of the first areas that's taking advantage of those new freedoms. And there's already been some announcements with Siemens and other companies, and lots of jobs are being created. So I'm optimistic about your part of the world, partly because of that new free port that's going to come in there.
It's interesting that there are the highest rate of job vacancies there ever have been, and yet Sarah is finding it difficult to get a job. The two things don't really match, do they? If you've got the highest rate of job vacancies ever, you would expect people to be able to move around the labour market much more easily.
Yes, and as I said, not to get into Sarah's specific circumstances, that if she talks to her work coach, perhaps they can help point Sarah in the right direction, whether it's Kickstart or something else. But yeah, unemployment is now back at the very low levels that we saw before the pandemic, which again, testament to everyone's hard work and British business. And as you said, Iain, job vacancies are at record highs. There are lots of jobs available for people who want them broadly all around the country at lots of different skill levels. And we are there standing by people to help them get new qualifications if they need to do some of those jobs.
Sarah, thank you very much. And in Aldershot is our next caller. And what would you like to ask the Chancellor?
Hi, thanks for taking my call, Rishi and Iain. So interestingly, reference the Kickstart scheme. We actually took 4 Kickstarters on, and I'm pleased to say we've just placed one of them in a full-time job at the end of their placement. So that scheme works, which is great news for us. So we founded our business in April 2020, so just after the lockdown began. And obviously, because of when we founded the company, we missed the eligibility for the business interruption loan scheme, the recovery loan scheme. And of course, being a new business, no lenders want to touch us with a barge pole. They don't want to lend us without 3 years trading history, with uncertainty of the pandemic and now the Ukraine situation, despite our growth. I need to hire people to scale faster. I need to borrow to do that. But of course, with the inability to borrow without putting my house up as collateral, what can you do to help incubator small businesses and businesses like mine thrive and borrow securely in a post-pandemic world?
And what kind of business do you have?
We're a digital learning company, so EdTech. So ironically, in the training piece, we do support unemployed people with that too. But that's what we are. So we trade internationally.
Yeah, fantastic. It's exciting to hear. And look, businesses like yours, that's what drives our economy. So thank you for doing what you do. Thanks for being part of the Kickstart scheme as well. You've given that young person a great start to their career.
Somebody here is saying the Kickstart scheme ends next week. Is that true?
Yeah, it's been in place since the
If it's been a success,
pandemic.
why not continue it?
Because now unemployment is back to where it was and youth unemployment is lower, it doesn't need the government to come in and subsidise all those jobs, because actually companies themselves are creating them with their own resources, which is great. But we stepped in at a time when we weren't sure that was going to be the case. Now, a couple of things quickly, Anne. Look, on hiring staff yourself, so one thing we announced today for all the small business owners that are listening is an increase in something called the employment allowance. Now, what that is a discount on your employer NICS bills. And we increased it today by £1,000. So that's effectively £1,000 tax cut for about 500,000 small businesses on the cost of employing your staff. That will come in the next week or two. So hopefully that's helpful. And in terms of getting finance to companies like yours, I mean, that's what I used to do for a living, and I know some of the struggles that people have. There's something called the recovery loan scheme that we put in place after the pandemic that I don't know if that was helpful or could be helpful to you. I'd have a look at that, talk to your bank about it. But also and that's, again, similar government guaranteed loan scheme, but also through the British Business Bank, we provide lots of equity and other support for companies like yours that are entrepreneurial. We actually have a regional angels programme, which has got about £150 million more for the next few years to fund, really exciting new companies that, like yours, are doing innovative things. So have a look at that online, the regional angels programme, and that's for angel funding on the equity side. And the British Business Bank have a range of other programmes, and hopefully one of them will support businesses like yours, because we want you to grow.
And?
That's useful. Yeah, the recovery loan scheme, we're not eligible, unfortunately, because we incorporated too late for that. But I guess after 2 years trading, that will fix it. The regional angel scheme does sound like an interesting one, so I'll investigate that one further. Thank you.
Okay.
Perfect. Thanks.
Thank you very much indeed. Timothy in Birmingham is our next caller. Timothy, what's your question for the Chancellor?
New time, so it's nice to speak to you, first time caller. And Rishi Sunak, Chancellor. I just want to ask,
Timothy.
Hi, how are you doing? I know you've had a hard day, but why have you not done something for people on benefits? Because you just said to the lady that you were doing something with regards to that, but the household support fund that I've applied for and things like that, it's not easy to apply for, and it doesn't go for people like me who are single. It's only for families. So you should give the money directly to the benefits, like Iain said, the £20. It's the way to target it, but you keep going on about this household support fund to get you out of it by mentioning that you're putting money towards that.
Well, Timothy, it's not just for people with kids. It's designed to help the most vulnerable people. And obviously, we also care about children and making sure they don't grow up in poverty. And I'll make sure that when we give the guidance to local authorities, which we will do shortly, with how they spend this £500 million that they're getting on top of the £500 million that they've had, that we do make sure that it's not exclusively for people with kids, and people like you can benefit from it. And I'm very hopeful that you can. And again, it's hard to know your specific circumstances, but I don't know if one of the other things that we're doing today or have done will help you. But I want to make sure that we are supporting people who need our help, and I think that this new programme will do that.
You do things and you don't think. You're changing the warm home discount. A lot of disabled people are now going to miss out on the warm home discount because that's been changed. And a lot of people haven't talked about this, but this is going to come up. The warm home discount criteria has been changed where you can't apply for it for yourself anymore. It's going to be done automatically by them assessing you. And a lot of people are going to miss out. Have you thought about that?
Well, so Timothy, just to reassure you on that actually the rationale for automating the warm homes discount is to make sure that people don't miss out, and more people will now be...
PDF documents. There was 20 documents on the gov.co website, and I've read them all, and they've even said themselves 30% or something people's going to miss out, including disability. It's in your criteria. On your documents.
No, so I think. Well, so again, I don't. Actually, what's happening, as far as I'm aware, is we're actually increasing the number of people who are going to benefit from the warm home discount, and it should go up by about a third to 3 million people with the new programme, and it's also going up to £150. So for those, there'll be other listeners that may benefit from this, and others that will want to know what it is. That's a programme that operates through energy bills to provide a discount off bills to people, for example, on pension credit or in who are using other means tested benefits. And as I said, it's worth about £150 now. It's gone up from what it was, and the eligibility is expanding rather than contracting, going up to 3 million people.
But why is it when you will tell me that the government is spending more on disability benefits than ever before, I get so many callers over the months telling me that they're getting less money? The two things don't seem to compute.
Well, look, Iain, it's obviously hard to everyone's individual situation unless I sit down with them or their MP sits down with and goes through it. It's quite hard to know exactly what everyone's circumstances are. But you are right, in aggregate, we are spending more than we ever have done on disability benefits, £58 billion. And the OECD, who's an organisation that compares what other advanced economies do, they do a comparison of what everyone spends as a percentage of their GDP. And if you look at that, we spend more than countries like South Korea and Japan in Asia. We spend more than the US and Canada. We spend more than Germany and Austria in Europe. So kind of at an aggregate level, there's obviously a lot of money. And then, beyond that, we're supporting those with disabilities in lots of different ways, whether it's £1 billion over the next few years to help those with disabilities move into work, whether it's £1.5 billion on something called the Disabilities Facility Grant that many of your listeners will have benefited from, which makes improvements in your home so that you can live independently for longer. We're spending money improving access at railway stations. And today we announced something, actually, Timothy, just so you know, this is really important to me personally. We announced some more money for something called Changing Places Toilets today. And as a constituency MP, this is an issue I came across years ago, where there are about 250,000 people in our country who have complex disabilities, and for them, a typical disabled toilet doesn't actually meet their needs. They need more space, a hoist and a changing bench. And obviously not having a member of my family in that situation, it was not something I was aware of, but constituents came to talk to me about it. And then in my ministerial job previously, I was managing to change the building regulations, so new buildings above a certain size would incorporate a changing places toilet. And we announced today more funding that will increase the number of changing places toilets around the country by about 40%, an extra 500. And it may seem a small thing, but talking to families for whom this is really important, it's about giving them, their kids, the dignity that they deserve to live their lives. So it just shows you that this is something that I hopefully will show you that it's something that I do care deeply about.
Okay, we have another 15 minutes with the Chancellor, but I know it goes quickly, doesn't it? But let's take a little break now for the LBC News Headlines. It's 7:30. Here's Amelia Cox.
The Chancellor has defended his spring statement, saying the government is doing all it can to help people with their energy bills. Rishi Sunak says the household support fund will be doubled so councils can help those who are struggling the most. He's told LBC he wants to help.
I wish I could solve every problem that comes our way, but I can't. But where I can make a difference, of course, I'm going to. This government is on the side of hard-working British families, your listeners, and we'll get through these next challenges together and move forward.
The rise in national insurance will go ahead next month, but the threshold is being increased by £3,000 in July. A cut to fuel duty of 5 pence per litre has come into force and will run over the next 12 months. Labour has accused the government of making the wrong choices and says ministers don't understand the challenges people are facing. LBC weather, dry and largely clear tonight. The odd shower for the far west of Scotland by dawn, a low of 2 degrees.
LBC. Iain Dale on LBC.
It is 7:33 on LBC. We have the Chancellor of the Exchequer, Rishi Sunak, taking your calls. Let's go to our next call. It's from Ian in Fife. Hello, Ian.
Hi, good evening. I'd like to ask the Chancellor, why did he think that national insurance was the only tax that he could have raised when raising capital gains tax, for example, could have done the same?
Hi, Ian. Yeah, great question. A very simple and straightforward answer, actually. When you need to raise the sums of money that we needed to support the NHS, tackle the backlog and fund social care properly, there are only 3 taxes that raise enough to do that. It's VAT, income tax and national insurance. And if you spoke to any independent think tank, economics person, and not just necessarily me telling it, I think they would all agree and tell you the same thing. Those are the only 3.
Rachel Reeves doesn't agree. She thinks she should have a windfall tax, which would raise several billion.
And then I don't think there's a single credible economics institution that would support that would raise the money that we need on a sustainable basis. I'm fairly confident if you check.
BP are saying that the energy crisis has been a cash machine for them. I mean, surely if companies like that are making excess profits, if companies like Amazon make excess profits during a pandemic, surely there is justification for doing that, and that would raise billions.
So it's two different things. So to Ian's point, I'm very comfortable and confident in saying most independent people would say, look, there's only those 3 taxes that would raise the double-digit billions we need for the NHS. And I think of those 3, national insurance is progressive because it means the burden is borne by those with the broader shoulders. The top 15% of payers in national insurance will pay half of the overall levy amount. That gives you a sense of how progressive it is. And it means, unlike the others, businesses also share, which I think is reasonable and right. They benefit from a well-funded NHS. Now, to your second point on windfall taxes, actually, I think that lots of people will have that question. The easiest thing in the world for me and a politician to do, right, is to stand up and say, great, let's tax oil companies more. That, I'm sure that's enormously popular, right? And, the reason I haven't done that is because I think it would be counterproductive. And that for the simple reason is we need to get more investment into UK energy, particularly in the North Sea and also in renewables. And last year saw the lowest amount of investment on record pretty much in the North Sea, but there are billions of pounds of projects waiting to go, and I want to see that investment happen. I think that's good for the 200,000 jobs that are in that industry. It's good for British energy security for us to have more homegrown or home-generated energy, and a windfall tax would put that off. And I'd say, look, I think there's an announcement already from Shell today committing to, I think, over £20 billion of new investment in UK energy. That's what I want to see. I don't want to scare that off. And also, just last thing on this, bear in mind, the companies, these oil companies, they already pay effectively a windfall tax. They pay twice the corporation tax that everyone else pays. So all the other businesses pay 19% at the moment, and these guys pay 40%. So they already pay double the rate of tax.
But they're still making £20 billion of profit.
Yeah, and I want to make sure that profit gets reinvested in the UK. And as you saw the announcement from Shell today, that's what they're doing, and that's good for the country if they do that.
Just on this income tax national insurance rise, and then you've promised now to cut income tax by 1 penny by 2024, coincidentally the year that there's probably going to be an election. I'm sure that's a coincidence. Why not... Andrew Neil posed this question on Twitter this afternoon, so I'm not pretending this is original to me. Why not just keep income tax at 20% and abolish the NI rise? Because effectively what you're doing is rewarding those with unearned income and taxing jobs, taxing the strivers.
No, so that's not what we're doing. And the big difference between this new levy is, for the first time ever, and people are going to see it on their pay slips starting soon and then in more detail next year, we will have a dedicated funding stream for the thing that we all care most about, and that's the NHS and social care. And for the first time, we'll have a specific tax where every penny that you pay, you know with confidence, legally, is going to go direct to the thing that you care most about. And everyone's been reading and hearing about the backlogs. Many people's families, you'll be experiencing this yourself, the wait time for getting your treatment. I don't think that's right. And I know that there's a team at the NHS that are really committed to working hard to work on that backlog and get it down, but they need funding to do that. And we all saw what was going on with social care in the pandemic. We want to make sure it's well funded going forward. And I think it's right that we have a dedicated funding stream for the thing we care most about. That's what the levy does. And cutting income tax will be something that will benefit tens of millions of people across the UK. And that comes on top of the tax cut we announced today by raising national insurance thresholds.
Why announce that tax cut now? We're in early 2022. You're saying it'll be done by the end of the Parliament, which would be probably middle of 2024. Well, why not save that announcement until you're actually going to do it?
Because, today wasn't just about the individual policies. Today was also about a plan. And we published something today called a tax plan. And I'd urge your listeners to go online and have a look at it. And
it's nothing better.
It's deliberately written in a way that I hope is accessible, easy to understand. Because what I wanted is for people to know what our direction of travel is over the rest of this Parliament. And it's not just about a random policy here. It's about giving people the reassurance that me and the government, we've got a plan for what to do with taxes over the next few years. We started last autumn by cutting the tax on universal credit. Today, we cut taxes for national insurance and for fuel and for small businesses. We're going to be cutting more taxes for businesses to encourage more investment in the UK, more R&D, and then we're going to cut income tax. So people now have a clear sense of what this government is about, and that's being on the side of hard-working families and making sure that they have more money to keep in their own pockets.
You are pitching yourself as a tax-cutting Chancellor, as any Conservative Chancellor would do, but you have raised more taxes in the last 2 years than any Chancellor in the last 50 years. Our tax burden is going up from 33% of GDP to 37% of GDP by 2026-27. Don't you get embarrassed by those figures as a Conservative Chancellor who tries to say that he's a tax-cutting Chancellor?
Iain, I'm also the Chancellor that had to deal with a once-in-a-century pandemic. I'm also the Chancellor that experienced the biggest economic shock to the country for 350 years. Saw borrowing spiral to levels that we haven't seen since World War II. I'm the Chancellor that had to introduce furlough. So, yeah, I have to deal with the world as it is, not as the way I would like it to be.
Why not say then, look, we can't cut taxes for the next few years. We've got a terrible financial situation. Borrowing is at the third highest level it's ever been in this country, £138 billion of borrowing this year. We need to sort that out first. We need to sort out inflation first, and that means there ain't going to be any tax cuts.
But the point that I've made is we've made some difficult decisions to do exactly that and be fixing the public finances with the decisions that I've made. It's not always easy to do those things, but they're the right things to do. They're the responsible things to do for the country. And because we've done that, and because things are better, because the economy's growing, people are in work, and debt is forecast to be falling, borrowing is coming under control. But it's important. It's because we've done those things that I can stand up today and say, yes, we're now going to be cutting your taxes, and we started that today with more to come, and we're still investing in public services, and we've got a grip on our borrowing and debt. That's what you get from a Conservative government.
Slightly running out of time, as I think you can see from the clock. So let's move on to Julia in Southampton. Julia, very good evening. What would you like to ask?
Oh, hello. Thank you very much for taking my call. I'm a member of a group that recently wrote to Rishi Sunak, so I'd just like to pose the question that we asked previously. So I'm a member of a group called Patriotic Millionaires, and we are people with wealth over a certain level, and we have asked Rishi Sunak to tax wealth as opposed to putting up national insurance on working people. Rishi recently just said that there's no independent institute that proposed any other tax that could raise the amount of money that's needed. But actually, Oxfam and the Institute for Policy Studies in January published a report that found that a sort of relatively moderate annual wealth tax in the UK could raise 43.71 billion a year, and that would just be raising a tax on wealth over a certain level. So they started
let's get to the answer, Julia, because we are running out of time.
Yep, let me quickly do that. Well, Julia, I'm from Southampton as well, so lovely to have your call. I don't know about where you're from, but I'm from Bassett and a big Saints fan. So nice to meet you. So Patriotic Millionaires, that sounds fantastic. What I'd say very quickly is we have now created a website and a means for people like you that are incredibly public spirited to pay extra tax if you would like. There's if you look online, you will be able to find it. I think you can do it with direct debit as well. Amazingly, we didn't used to have something like that was very easy, but now you can. I'd urge you and your members in your group to have a look at that, and very much look forward to getting that from you, and commend your public spiritedness.
Okay, Julia, thank you very much indeed. Now, you opened your speech today by announcing continued support for Ukraine, and it's great to be able to announce further support for the Concert for Ukraine, which is an amazing concert which LBC is supporting with Ed Sheeran and loads of other acts, including Snow Patrol, the Manic Street Preachers, and it's happening next Tuesday. Now, it's going to be shown live on ITV, and I know you'll be listening to backstage to the show on Capital, because you're a great fan of Capital Radio. I know that. It is on Heart 2 as well, by the way, Chancellor. So you've got something that you want to announce on this?
Oh, yes, that's right. Well, hey, look, this concert sounds fantastic. I think, isn't Ed Sheeran also coming? And
I did say Ed Sheeran.
Oh, did you say Ed Sheeran?
I think
right,
I did,
and Camilla
anyway.
Cabello, I thought. Great lineup. And well, I think the tickets they've either sold out or they're about to sell out, which is brilliant. Well, thank you to Global for organising this. I think it's brilliant. And what I wanted to let people know is all the VAT that is paid on these tickets, we will make sure that same money is donated back to the charitable causes that the concert is going towards. So you should, when you see that VAT on your ticket, assume that we're going to give that right back to the charity, and that I think will be a significant donation, and we'll have a great night next week. And I'm really excited and thankful for Global for putting it on.
Unfortunately, I won't be able to watch it because I'll be doing this show. Now,
right.
That final dreaded question that at the end of the interview, I heard Andrew Marr in a podcast recently say that you felt that you weren't ready to take on the top job of Prime Minister. You confided that in Friends, according to Andrew. I always think there's nothing wrong with showing ambition and wanting to be Prime Minister. Is that a job that you might like one day? Now, you're obviously going to say not now, there's no vacancy and all the rest of it, but one day, is it something you fancy?
I am going to say that, Ian, because, gosh, if you look at everything that's on my plate at the moment, it's the right thing for me to be focused on that. And I know right now people are struggling with the cost of living, and that's why today, we've been working on it for a while. We announced this tax plan, and it delivers the biggest net cut in personal taxes in a quarter of a century. Fuel duty cut by 5p, saving people £100 coming in tonight. National insurance thresholds.
You're not kind of answering the question.
No, but I think these are the things that I've been working on. These are the things that people expect me to do. It's delivering that tax cut and national insurance, £330, and an income tax cut. Because, look, there are uncertain times ahead, and we need to face these global challenges together. And I want people to know that I'm on their side, we're on their side, and we're going to support British families through it.
Now, we know that you love Capital Radio. You've got a Capital Radio mug on your desk, I believe.
Yes.
Well, I couldn't let you go, and we know you like your hoodies. So here is
look at that.
A Capital Radio hoodie. Now, if that doesn't guarantee that you come back after the budget statement in October to do this again, I don't know what will.
Oh, wow.
Thank
Look
you.
at that.
Thank you very much
This
indeed.
is Capital Dance.
Well, there you go.
There you go.
Even better.
Okay, well, next time I'm listening to Capital Weekender in the car, I'll have this on. Here we go. Brilliant.
Unfortunately have to leave it there. Rishi Sunak, Chancellor of the Exchequer, thank you very much for joining us on LBC. We have Cross Question coming up at 8. If you'd like to phone in with your questions for that, please do so. 0345 6060 973.